All right, so it's great to finally do this podcast with you, especially since just spent 4 days, 4 nights over at Necker Island for the Principal Business Summit. Let's just start there. How are you feeling after the event?
Not good. I think Necker Island and what you hosted, Alexander, um, and the individuals that were invited, and their purpose and their mission and the things that we're trying to do for the greater good of humanity while still being profitable, right? So, talk about conscious capitalism at its best was not only intellectually stimulating, but being on Necker Island was also like physically exhilarating. And so I got to tap into the two things that I love most, right? Which is intellectual stimulation and being able to learn and grow from others. But we had a lot of fun doing it. And so now I'm back into the real world of things and going through email and Slack and Teams and meetings. And I'm like, it's a bit of a Debbie Downer, I won't lie, but I'm getting through it.
Well, I was just so thrilled you were able to make it and really appreciate that. I'm curious, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the event and the people there?
I am just so surprised at the diversity of individuals, the diversity of problems, and the good heart and the good nature that everyone embeds. Um, I was able to learn a lot across a variety of things. My running joke is I learned about how we're cutting through stone to build underlying grid lines to be able to support this emergence of needs around artificial intelligence and electricity and capacity, to how do you take care of supply chain for live produce so that we could feed the world, to how do you overcome fear and how that's actually a trained reaction. It was just the diversity of conversations was vast. The diversity of individuals was vast. It was amazing to hear the left wing, the right wing, and the libertarians get into a group and talk about the business problems of the future. And I think, but we all were grounded on a common principle. And Lars had said it best, right? Capitalism breeds excellence, but principled capitalism breeds an excellent world. And I think we were all just able to come together and go, how do we make this place a better place now that we're here and we're vested? And how is our purpose aligned towards making this place a better place? And, I have two young kids, and every conversation was, how do I make it a better place for them as well? And so, like, it was just wonderful, wonderful on many, 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 many different levels.
I love that. And I think that's the perfect segue to talk about your purpose and what really drives you for everyone who's just getting to know you right now.
If you would have asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, it definitely wasn't this. But to give you a little bit of a backdrop and a backstory, I shared with folks that I actually played rugby on the women's national team, and I thought I was going to be an athlete for the rest of my life. And then started aging, and recovery takes a little bit longer. And I was like, okay, I guess I got to get a real job. Applied to a bunch of real jobs, became a data engineer, and I was like, nah, that's not my calling. I'm okay at it, but I'm not good at it. And just kind of took on project management, took on sales roles, and just kind of tapped into a bunch of different things. And then ultimately, I got into the world of data, which was strange, but I really, really enjoyed it. And IBM came recruited for me, and I went from being an individual contributor to managing a team, then a division, then a P&L. Then when they launched Watson, I got a chance to help launch Watson. And I was traveling the world, helping other enterprises develop their AI strategy, AI use cases. And then we would sell these deals, and then I would go back and work with the product managers of like, okay, we just sold this. Now we've got to deliver on it. So I got to work with the technical team, and my whole career has just blossomed, if you will, accidentally, because I was at the wrong place at the wrong time and I said yes to the right thing. And it was data and AI, which were the two geekiest topics back in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. But more than ever, boy, is it relevant. And so I've had the wonderful opportunity of serving some really big companies. I was a partner at Ernst& Young and IBM, leading their data and AI practices. I was the first chief data and chief AI officer for Fortune 100, appointed back in 2016. I was a CDO for Sony, for Merck Pharmaceuticals. I've worked for companies like Estee Lauder. Um, it's just been amazing serving these really, really, really big companies. And so now I'm at the forefront of a revolution that I got to see play out in 2011 to 2015, and it's happening all over again. All that is to say that I'm in the space of AI, but on the practical side of it, I'm not a futurist. I'm not like, oh, 15 years down the road. That's not how my brain works. It's how do I take these remarkable capabilities and democratize them and deploy them for enterprises to be able to help the workforce with productivity, with efficiency. And what I've discovered in the process is my purpose now is how do we leverage these magnificent capabilities to enhance and amplify our greatest investment, which is human capital, our workforce, versus displace them and weaken their cognitive capabilities. So, how do we leverage this amazing technology for the betterment of the workforce and mankind versus for the detriment? And I think a lot of times the conversation is around, well, if we get to deploy this and we're going to reduce our workforce by X percent, and I'm challenging everyone. If you deploy AI and I give you 18% capacity back within a team of 22 people, your job is not to replace 5 of the 22. Your job is to take that extra capacity and get those people in a room to solve the next business problem that you've not been able to solve the past few years. It's about reallocating the resources, not replacing the resources to high value tasks while we automate the low value tasks.
So there's a lot for us to get into because AI is the hot topic of the world, of the whole world today. But you've seen this industry from its nascent beginnings to where it is now. So just walk us through the evolution that you've seen and what's different about where we're at now versus in the beginning when you started with this that people may not realize.
Yeah, so like the difference between when Watson was launched and when ChatGPT was launched. One, Watson was B2B. ChatGPT, the original intent, the whole purpose of the nonprofit, which is why Elon Musk is a little bit pissed, was how do we democratize AI capabilities to the world and not put it in the hands of a few technology companies? That was the original intent. Whereas with Watson, we weren't there yet. And so it was how do we help these enterprises innovate in ways that they've never been able to do before with artificial intelligence. So the first difference was one was B2B and the other one was direct to consumer, D2C. The second one is if you think about the cost of running AI workloads in 2011 to now, my running joke is you can go to Amazon and buy a 4 terabyte jump drive for under $200. Do you know what that would have cost in 2011? Like
Was it even
nearly
available at
$1 million.
that point?
Yeah, exactly. It was to IBM who owned infrastructure, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So with storage, with chip development, with compute, with infrastructure efficiencies, we are now able to leapfrog in a way that we've never seen before. And we literally are one prompt away from any type of knowledge we want. And so if you take a look at enterprise versus D2C, contained data set versus unlimited data set because of storage, it's unbelievable what the differences in capabilities are. But what I loved about Watson is it didn't short circuit the learning process. It didn't short circuit having humans in the loop. Unfortunately, now with a lot of the deployments that I'm seeing, we're making some wrong decisions around what it's really intended to do versus how we're deploying it because they're using it as a shortcut. And the intent wasn't to be a shortcut by any means. We don't want to depreciate our asset, which is human capital, while we're deploying artificial intelligence. We legitimately just want to create more value while reducing manual labor. But that doesn't mean displacing labor. And I think folks are getting it wrong.
So we need to dig into that a lot. Now, it is pretty easy to see that AI can replace humans. That's the biggest fear people have about this. But what's the other way that you think businesses can look at AI and the future of this to actually amplify that human capability?
The mental mindset shift that I want everyone to understand kind of falls into a few different things. I created this thing called the AI discernment model, and it's a simple quadrant. When should you use AI only? and it's dependent on risk exposure, complexity to deploy, and if it makes sense for that right business area. Versus when should it be human only, like national defense contracts, like just to give you an example. AI only, copy and paste functions for data aggregation. Human only, you're negotiating national defense contracts. But then in between is when it should be human led with AI supported, or AI led with human supported. And that's the area that gets really gray because most people want everything to be AI. And I'm saying that there's a right place and a right time to deploy artificial intelligence, and getting the right business area and use case right really, really matters. I'm called in constantly when things haven't gone wrong. I'm like, what did we do wrong? And I'm like, well, you picked the wrong use case to begin with for your internal maturity, but also you shouldn't be using AI here. Like AI is actually the wrong answer for this. AI is not meant for everything. You know, why use a chainsaw if a scissor does a trick? It's just that in and of itself is inefficient, which is why companies are struggling with the return on investment. They're like, well, we went to production. Why are we not seeing the return on investments? And those are the reasons why. So I think there's a space and time of when to use AI and when not to, and understanding how to discern is really, really helpful. And I think the second aspect of it is, yes, we're being promised with, it's going to give us back productivity, capacity, efficacy. There's all sorts of amazing opportunities. But the intent is to be able to do more with what we have, not with less. We're making this mistranslation that efficiency equates to reduction in headcount and workforce. But what we need to understand is that actually the demands upon us continue to accelerate at a rate that we can't keep up with, period. So how do you keep the knowledge workers and the workforce in hand to solve the more complex problems, be able to address the questions of individuals and companies and entities while we automate a lot of the lower task and mundane activities? If you look at industries like telco, utilities, transportation, mining, oil and gas, law, insurance, these are very much human-based industries. Some call them legacy, and I'm like, you could call it legacy maybe from a technology perspective, but I think it's only a matter of time before they catch up. They're very much relationship-based because the relationships are what create the trust. And so how do you leverage those individuals who have those relationships, have the institutional knowledge, and have an understanding of how business is done within that arena, and apply them in a field of play that's fundamentally needed to help your business grow? And by growth, it could be increase your EBITDA so that a private equity group can purchase you, or go public, or increase the margin so your shareholder value increases. Opportunity comes in many, many different forms. But again, it's all about being able to do more with what you have versus everyone taking the default route of let's cut headcount.
So you cover a whole lot of this in your book, your AI Survival Guide, and I highly recommend it to everyone. But let's dig into this discernment model because I think it is pretty obvious that there to people when we want humans only versus when we want AI only, and that they don't conflict with each other. But the two in between that you said sound very similar to each other. When it's AI driven with human support versus when it's human driven with AI support. How do you make the delineation between those?
I'll give you a very practical example. About a year and a half ago, I was brought into a healthcare provider, and they had deployed artificial intelligence across a variety of hospitals within the Southeast. And they, within a matter of 3 months, had 2 lawsuits. So someone referred me and I came in and I was taking a look to see what happens. And where they deployed artificial intelligence was in their oncology department, right? So for cancer patients. And the use case itself, in theory, was very right. Because if you take a look at the role of an oncology doctor who is meeting cancer patients all day long, assessing, understanding, treating, prescribing, half the time it's determining if they have cancer at all. So there's a ton of x-rays and scans involved in that process. Well, a doctor is meeting anywhere from 6 to 10 patients a day and then sending them to the labs to go get an x-ray. That doctor either has to wait until the end of the night to review the x-ray results or the end of the week, which then means this poor individual has to wait for the results for a whole week. But no matter how you look at it, that doctor is strained. that doctor is tired. And the last thing you want is a misdiagnosis. So the use case was actually very simple. We're going to have artificial intelligence do the scanning of the x-rays and diagnose if they had cancer or not, at what stage, and what type was clear based on the doctor's notes. Okay, but the way that they had deployed it was AI led with human assisted. What that means is the AI was scanning through the x-rays, diagnosing it, and then the doctor was signing off on it. That led to a lot of risk exposure, which led to lawsuits. I went in and I said, well, the use case is right. Your deployment strategy was incorrect. This needs to be human-led with AI assistance. So you need to pivot and go, AI still does the job and goes through the scanning, but that is assisting the doctor in their end of week or end of day activity, because it still has to be the doctor is the dominant factor. If anything was diagnosed as cancer at the stage, that doctor has to verify and validate. Yes, it is much easier being an editor rather than an author. So the AI is doing the pre-diagnosis. All the doctor is doing is the validation. But in the cases where the AI did not detect it a cancer cell, that's exactly the case in point where the doctor needs to go in and do the assessment themselves. So in one case where it detected cancer, they verify, validate, sign off. In the case where it didn't, you don't take the artificial intelligence output as the gospel. That's when you actually have to go in, because you can pick up on nuances based on your experience that may or may not have been in the data set that the model was trained in. So it's very easy to mix the two, but that's what had happened, and that's what led to lawsuits. So I was like, it's okay, just pivot from this quadrant to this, and this is the new process that you have to deploy. And so that's what that discernment framework actually allows you to do.
Which is a great example of where it should be human-led with AI support. What would be an
Yes.
example where you think AI does lead, but then you do have human support for it?
That's easy, like content creation. I have a lot of thoughts in my head, a ton. And I write books, I write articles, I do keynotes. And that's not even like my part-time job. That's like 4 to 5% of my job. I already know what I want to talk about. I already know the direction, but to take the time to do these well-crafted narrations, quite frankly, I just want a bit of instead of a mood board, I want a word board. So I will dump all my thoughts into my foundational model of choice, and I'll exactly articulate this audience, this industry, my experience, my thoughts, my words. Give me a storyline that'll flow, because I don't want my mental taxation to be on the flow. I want it to be on the content. And it'll give me a narration. And then from there, I get to edit it however which way I want. I've saved myself probably about 45 minutes to an hour. That's an easy one of where it could be AI led, just narration. Tell me the story. This is how I want to cover it. These are the different pieces. And then I take that, and that's where I start. Like, nope, don't like this. Yes, like this. This one's a little bit off. Maybe if I tune this. And something that could take me an hour, hour and a half, I could do it within about 15 to 18 minutes.
Brilliant. Now, with AI becoming so commonplace and companies starting to think, will AI replace employees, or how do they make sure this is adding value? It seems like it's really important for employees to lean into AI as a new technology and learn how to use this. It sounds like,
Yeah.
what's your reaction to that, and what employees should be thinking about and how they use this, and what companies should think about training employees or helping them learn how to use this most effectively?
The number one reason why AI engagements, projects, deployments fail is lack of adoption. The mistake that most deployments take right now is they figure that if you go from a prototype and push it into production, you turn the lights on, now you can use it, that means you're successful. I don't know about you, but if I spent $3 million on deployment, heck, $500,000 on deployment, and 3 people are using it, that's not a great ROI on my investment. I don't know about anyone else. Because the real work actually starts after it's in production. So things don't fail because of bad models. They fail because of bad integration and adoption. And the reason why adoption doesn't happen is because the fear of job loss, because our mental model is, oh, efficiencies means less headcount. And the workforce is not dumb. They understand that. So because they're in tune to this stuff, they're like, why would I use this? Because I'm going to lose my job. This makes no sense. That's the first thing.
Mm,
The second aspect of it is businesses aren't very clear on why they're deploying it and what they're going to do with the future workforce. So this AI and human hybrid workforce, that is not outlined or mapped out. So they don't know their role in the future. Well, I'm going to preserve and ring fence my job function as much as possible because my company has not done a good enough job of outlining what my role in the future is going to be. And third, we are dangling the carrot of job replacement, not upskilling or job enhancement. So they're like, well, I'm just going to keep using what I'm using and I'm not going to use AI. And it's totally allowed because, by the way, part of the deployments, they don't sunset or they don't remove the existing applications and systems. Those are still turned on. So now you've got
mm.
AI and the existing workflow. Of course, the workforce is going to use what they're familiar with and the thing that protects their job most. And that's why a lot of the enterprises are struggling.
So, would it be fair to say that your recommendation for companies that are thinking about how to use AI the right way here is to really think about its integration and implementation and how the whole team will use this to make sure that you get the most out of it and use that then to amplify their work rather than replace people?
100%. Because there isn't an industry I know where problems aren't solved by individuals in a room. I don't care how progressive you are. Now, one can make the argument, maybe not in 5 to 8 years, perhaps. However, our job, and this is where my purpose comes into place, is to make sure that there is still a human in the loop. We're still making the decisions for the rest of humanity. And these tools and these technologies and these amazing advents are all meant to elevate our inherent and natural abilities and to strengthen these cognitive muscles, not weaken them. So that would be an ideal and utopic future for sure.
So there's so much more for us to go into, but I need to respect your time here. And so just want to ask to wrap this up, what else have we not covered that people aren't thinking enough about when it comes to AI that you would give as a key message to the Liberty Ventures Network?
For anyone who's thinking about it, be mindful of one, not everything needs to be solved by AI. And, I don't make my profits, if you will. I don't believe in just deploying for the sake of deploying it. I believe in doing it because I know there's a high chance of success and it's going to empower the organization. But you have to go through a level of discernment and decide whether you need AI to solve a problem or not. Two, when you choose it, then you have to go through the optionality of understanding, well, do I need a human in the loop? Does a human lead or does a human assist, right? That whole discernment framework. The third is know that in any AI deployment, end to end, technology is 30%, the human aspect of it is 70%. And so part of my purpose is de-risking AI deployments. And the way I do that is I focus on the 70% that most people actually ignore. And I think a value that aligns really well with Liberty Ventures, conscious capitalism, and everything that we got a chance to discuss, Alexander, in Necker Island that you lovingly hosted that blew my mind away is how do we leverage all these amazing capabilities to elevate society, to elevate our intellectual curiosity and not accelerate intellectual atrophy? So how do we do good by the individual, by upskilling and training them? How do we do good by the company, by making them profitable, but also by the community so that we elevate our conscious awareness versus cost cutting, cut jobs, displace individuals, and short circuit, right? Just by using AI and plug and play. Like, this is a big no no.
What a great way for us to end. For everyone who's listening, you want more, go get Sol's book, Your AI Survival Guide. And Sol, thank you so much for just being absolutely amazing for everything that you're doing here and being part of this community now.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm just glad I was chosen, Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you, Sol.